loud, you can understand. I remember when I was in school, Shakespeare was a little bit dry for me. All that Shakespearean English. But until I watched,
just for you,
you know what I mean? Until I watched the play of Shakespeare, and then I was like, oh, so this part was a joke. It was funny. This part was this. I didn't quite get it when I was reading the dry language. But when I heard it, and when I watched the play, it came alive to me, or when I watched the movie. And so I think for children, it can really be a way to learn how to speak, pronounce, to understand and expand your vocabulary. So we did a children's book that I sent. I'd love to hit a penny. It was actually one of my mother's books. In that book, we tried to also introduce children to instruments in the Pan-African Orchestra. Like, how many children know what the sepewa is, or the gonje, or the some of the atentemben, or how many children can recognize some of those instruments? And I remember when I was growing up, there was a story called Peter and the Wolf. You might have heard of that. It was a Russian story, and it was written with some music intentionally to introduce Russian children to the instruments in the classical music orchestra. I loved it. I loved the melody. I loved the story, and I wanted to do a similar thing. So we did that with my mother's book, Summer Went Walking, and we have done it in English, in Ga, and other languages. And I don't know if it might be the time to.
Yes, actually, I think so. And you also have preempted the question I would have asked later about languages. But there are two things I need to do now. We do have an audience that is listening via Zoom, and I think that we have also connected via Instagram. And so if there are any questions, I think we can take them by text. That also extends to the audience who are here with us in person. But as Amma said, we have samples of audiobooks, and I think it's a good time to listen to Summer Went Walking by Nana Datsun. Is this the one in Ga?
This is the one in Ga. Okay. So you put, just if you could do like 2 minutes of it in Ga, and then there's another lovely children's book called Give Me My Yam, by a Jamaican writer called Jan Blake, and she's a master storyteller. She doesn't read the story, but another masterful storyteller tells it. And it sort of, again, explores that rhythm in language and storytelling. And I feel that those are really two great examples that if you play those in the classroom, for example, you can get kids engaged with the text.
Yeah, so I really like the idea of the audiobook as a teaching tool. Probably we can explore that in conversation. I keep piling so many things up for the later part of this conversation. I don't know if we'll be able to do all of them, but do we have the audio queued? Summer Went Walking?
Yeah, it's a bit longer than 5 minutes, but you just play 2 minutes and then
We don't have Summer Went Walking. How about Give Me My Yam? Okay, so let's listen to Give Me My Yam.
Jordan loved to eat yams. One day, he took his spade and dug and dug. He found a nice fat yam. He took his fat yam down to the River Denzo to wash it clean. Thought Jordan. This will taste delicious with a nice piece of brown stewed chicken. The River Denzo snatched his fat yam out of his hand and carried it away. Jordan put his hands on his hips and cried, Denzo, give me my yam, the yam that I found on my mother's farm. The River Denzo gave Jordan a big fat fish. Jordan walked home with his big fat fish. Thought Jordan, this will taste nice with some boiled green bananas. A great hawk swooped down and snatched his big fat fish out of his hand and carried it away. Jordan put his hands on his hips and cried, Hawk, give me my fish, the fish that Denzo gave me. Denzo, who took my yam, the yam that I found on my mother's farm. The hawk gave Jordan a beautiful tail feather. Jordan walked home with his feather. Thought Jordan. I don't imagine this will taste very nice, but it looks nice and it feels soft. I'll give this to my mom. The wind blew harder and snatched his feather out of his hand. Jordan put his hands on his hips and cried, Wind, wind, give me my feather. The feather that the hawk gave me, the hawk that took my fish, the fish that Denzo gave me, Denzo who took my yam, the yam that I found on my mother's farm. The wind gave Jordan a multicolored leaf. Thought Jordan.
We can end this here. Yes. Thank you very much. Well, that's a really entertaining sample,
isn't it?
Yes.
And for the children, it does all the repetition, and there's a drama and the humor in it, and what actually happens to Denzo eventually when you've taken the yam. What happened at the end? It's a really fabulous story, and I just think it's a Caribbean story. So we hear the Caribbean accent, and it's very similar also to the way we have our storytelling style. I think playing that in the classroom really gets kids laughing and talking and thinking about what would they do if they were Denzo. So.
Because of the accents, I'm wondering whether when you are putting out an audio book, you are geographically sensitive, let me put it that way, so that if you were changing your target market, maybe for a story like this, would you find a narrator who does probably speak like Ghanaian accents in English, or do you feel that because the writer is Jamaican, this is more authentic?
That's exactly how we feel. Our books, our catalog of books is African books, which means Africans on the continent, and also Black African books in the diaspora, global diaspora. There's so much to learn about from within the continent. And from Nigerian English, East Africans speak very differently, so do South Africans. And learning and understanding the nuances of all these different, and even within Ghana, we have varying dialects and the way we speak. So I'm just fascinated by all those different, and I think it just increases the variety of languages and speaking styles and so on that you're exposed to. So we wouldn't try to reproduce it in a Ghanaian language. We do books Ghanaians voiced by Ghanaians as much as possible. But we also give narrators the opportunity to expand and do, because, like, for example, in the Western world, any English voiced books could be any English speaker from the UK, from Germany, from wherever they can speak English. And I think it can be the same. If a Ghanaian wants to voice a Nigerian book, fine, but just try to make it as authentic as possible. So if we can't get a native speaker, we will use an African voice. And we've done that before,
This makes me want to find out a little bit about the production process. You have given us hints of what it may look like. You did mention studio time, you having to find voice actors essentially. But how does it work for you in terms of even finding a relevant script? Do publishers come to you and say, can you turn this into an audio book? Do you take original manuscripts and turn them into audiobooks? And once you have that manuscript, what does it look like until we have an audiobook?
Okay, well, sad to say, a lot of Ghanaian and African publishers don't come to me and say, turn it into an audiobook unless I will pay for it. So I mentioned that I'm big for foreign publishers who will come. They're ready to do, anytime they do a print book, they have their digital strategy ready and they do audio all at the same time. We haven't got there yet. A lot of our publishers are still stuck in print. So they'll do a print book. They won't even think about an audiobook. So I tend to have to go chasing. My philosophy has been the well-known publishers who are doing, work that is doing well in print already. That's about the loose kind of criteria I have. We've just got to the point, and until very recently, we had to pre-finance all the audiobooks production because the publishers were reluctant to pay for a digital copy. I mentioned narrators, so you're paying the narrators, the studio costs, there's editing costs, there's sound engineer to clean up, patch up the audio, make it sound nice. We do quality control. Once we've recorded the book, we have to have someone listen to the whole book with the page, make sure there are no mistakes. It goes back into the studio again. Then it's ready to be uploaded and sold. We also have to license. We even forgot that bit. You license. You can't just get up and take a book and record it. You have to get a license from the publisher. That usually costs money as well. So doing an audiobook can be quite pricey, and the publishers and the authors have to be ready for it. It's becoming more popular now in Ghana and also on the continent. One of the genres that has pushed that, interestingly, is memoir. Memoir, biographies. A lot of people do the book. It could be a big, dense book. And so they want to do the audio to make it more, like you hear the person's voice speaking.
When you hang on, have you ever had someone who had written a memoir offer to do the voice over themselves?
One, actually. Only one. It's always a bit daunting. Some say they'd like to try, but when they get into the studio and they realize how long it's going to take. And then also, let's be frank, not everybody has a beautiful voice that, can sustain over the number of hours that's needed to do it. But it's nice for a biography if the author can read it themselves. And I think I sent a sample of one of my favorite audiobook memoirs by Trevor Noah.
Born a Crime.
Yeah, Born a Crime.
Yes.
Trevor Noah's growing up story, and he's a comedian, so in South Africa, so he tells it beautifully with a lot of humor and fun and drama. He did have a dramatic life. And so his audiobook is one of the ones that he did himself. And a lot of the celebrities do their own audio. Obama has done his own, Michelle Obama, and so on. It works if they can, but if they can't, just get a very good voice to interpret and get your story out there.
I think we'd also take a listen to Trevor Noah's extracts, but I caught on to one of the other things you said, which was more or less alluding to the fact that it's not that easy to get good voices locally. Is it something which you feel further training could help out, or do you think that probably it's just because audiobooks haven't just caught on so much, and so people are not really looking in that direction?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's training. I think it's just reading more. If you read a lot, it's not so daunting to do a 200, 300 page book. If you enjoy reading, because I always make the narrators read the book through 2 times, and then we have a discussion before we start, just to make sure that they're really into it. And I encourage them to take notes on, on the characters and so on and so forth. So you really have to enjoy reading. Interesting. I've had a lot of people come from the what do you call it? Voiceover. Mm-hmm. Voiceover artists in the community who want to do audiobooks, and it's a completely different thing. Reading a commercial, a documentary, it's quite different. And I'm telling them that no, this is about being a storyteller. So are you a storyteller? You're not reading a documentary, you're not reading a news commercial or an advert. And you've got to be a storyteller to do an audio authentically. So a lot of them are interested in, taking up the challenge. And we're slowly growing our network of narrators. Some have beautiful voices, but that's not enough. You've got to really identify with the story and tell the story.
Okay, so I think it's a good time to listen now to Trevor Noah, the extract from Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime. And again, I think at this point we can also welcome any questions that are fielded, questions that the guests have, either online or in person. But if the audio is queued, we can take a listen to Born a Crime.
Part 1. The genius of apartheid was convincing people who were the overwhelming majority to turn on each other. Apartheid is what it was. You separate people into groups and make them hate one another, so you can run them all. At the time, Black South Africans outnumbered white South Africans nearly 5-1, yet they were divided into different tribes with different languages: Zulu, Xhosa, Tswana, Sotho, Venda, Ndebele, Tsonga, Pedi, and more. Long before apartheid existed, these tribal factions clashed and warred with one another. Then, white rule used that animosity to divide and conquer. Those tribes and other non-whites were systematically classified into various groups and subgroups. Then these groups were given different levels of rights and privileges in order to keep them at odds. Perhaps the starkest of those divisions was between South Africa's 2 dominant tribes, the Zulu and the Xhosa. The Zulu man puts his head down and fights. Against men with guns. The Zulu were slaughtered by the thousands, but they never stopped fighting. The Xhosa, on the other hand, pride themselves on being the thinkers. My mother is Xhosa. Nelson Mandela was Xhosa. The Xhosa waged a long war against the white man as well, but after experiencing the futility of battle against a better armed foe, many Xhosa chiefs took a more nimble approach. These white people are here whether we like it or not, they said. Let's see what tools they possess that can be useful to us. Instead of being resistant to English, let us learn English. We'll understand what the white man is saying, and we can force him to negotiate with us. The Zulu went to war with the white man. The Xhosa played chess with the white man. For a long time, neither was particularly successful, and each blamed the other for a problem neither had created. Bitterness festered. For decades, those feelings were held in check by a common enemy. Then apartheid fell. Mandela walked free, and Black South Africa went to war with itself.
Well, I think you are slowly making me a fan of audiobooks. They are very easy on the ear, actually. If you could share with us some of the challenges that you faced so far in running this publishing firm, actually.
Yeah, I think it's a new format for consumption of books, and so anything new is always, you've got that where you want to get people engaged. For many years, we've not had a good reading culture in Ghana because books are not available. I always say that if you don't grow up reading books, then it's very hard to learn to love books in a culture where reading books is really associated with school and passing an exam. So unless you're passing an exam or reading a textbook, you don't read. Of course, there's also social media and all the, sparkly, lovely things you can do on the internet. They're competing for reading time for young people. So the music, the videos, the games, the betting, all those fun things that you can do are competing for reading time. But I think one of the big disadvantages is that African publishers are not putting their books out digitally. Now, they're afraid of piracy and, if I give my book out, someone will take it and share it and so on. Piracy is real. We really respect our author's IP. But if you don't put the books out there in the space where young people are consuming information, then it won't be there. And so the habit is not there. They're not used to reading books online, at least not African books. A lot of young people are subscribing to some of the other platforms or trying to get pirated and free audio and ebooks online. I think it's up to the publishers to think about digital strategy for distribution. Everybody has a mobile phone in their hand. And for audio especially, you don't even need a smartphone. You can listen. You wouldn't need a smartphone. So I think one of the big challenges, the publishers themselves are slow to adopt digital and have digital strategies. And then funding, like I said, creating audiobooks are expensive. And so interesting, the last year or two, we've been busy making audiobooks for other publishers elsewhere who have budget for digital. And so that's the challenge, But we've been thinking about how can we make the books more affordable when we do them. Currently, our books are available on a platform. It's a pay-per-title model. We want to change that model to two models: subscription, where you pay a monthly fee and you get a certain number of books a month, and then also to a library model for schools, where you don't pay at all. You just have access to the books whenever you want them for the duration of your library loan. And I think, thanks, I think I was telling you, and thanks to Mamle also, the LA Public Library have a fantastic books. I've been a member for the last year, and I'm in my second year. It's amazing. And that makes a whole difference. And I think we want to develop that platform to give schools, because the school market has been a challenge to crack. Parents won't buy school books unless it's on the curriculum or it's a textbook. They just don't have the disposable income to buy, a storybook, So the digital downloadability and the discoverability also they don't know. They don't know where the books are. If you ask who are the top 10 children's book authors in Ghana, the average parent wouldn't know. So we need to put the books out there in front of them. Digital helps with the discoverability, So
yeah. But it does appear that so the challenges which you have mentioned have not been enough to keep you down. You've been running for how long now?
Yeah, almost 4 years. Yeah, we're keeping on it. We've been fortunate to bootstrapping and then running on business grants. We're trying to raise a seed now of funding. And we're getting support from UNICEF to roll out this library model for schools. So we still have to find out what the business model and the pricing for the school platform will be. But hopefully, with all the encouraging comments from government about smart school and incorporating technology, reading will get its place as well. A lot of reading comes in school, and so I'm excited about some of the books we've been doing that are, available for teenagers, especially. Teenagers, the age where if you lose them reading there, you can't get them back. And there isn't enough reading, African reading for teenagers, I think. We do have a sample that, again, yes. I'd love us to get into.
Yes, we'll get to that. Let me I'll let them, those who are online and those who are here. Okay, I see that there may be some questions. We will be taking a listen to The Kaya Girl by Mamle Kabu, and this falls into the, Mamle Wolo for this one, yes. But this falls into the genre of young adult fiction, what you just spoke about. For those who are able to get online, I suppose it's a good idea to search for Ako Books Audio, and that should take you to the platform so that you can see how to access the books. Maybe do a sign up and start enjoying books, maybe even before this program ends. But before we take a listen to that excerpt, Ako Books Audio has been receiving plaudits. It's been noticed internationally. You've actually received awards for the work that you have done, and of course we congratulate you for this. Is it that you have more people noticing you from outside than from inside Ghana?
Yeah, I think the audiobook market is a big one, the billion market, but it's way more developed in Europe and the US than it is here. In they're calling it Apollo Africa, and they're relaunching it for ebook and paperback. And so we approached them and said, well, what about the audiobook? And they said, well, we're not Africans. We don't do African audiobooks. And we said, we'd like to do it. So now you were asking about, a little bit about revenue and all that. We've been making revenue for making audiobooks for other publishers. And in fact, this Kaya Girl that we're going to listen to a sample for, we actually did it not for ourselves. It's not our content. It's we did it for Hachette Audio, and in order to redistribute it on our platform, we have to pay a license fee. And so, but what can we do? Yeah. We make some money from making books for other publishers. But for this particular deal, I was like, no, African Writers Series. We can't make these books. And what we want to do is, the old series. It was 200 plus titles in the original catalog, and then they come down to contemporary writers as well. But we want to retell those stories with modern contemporary voices. So it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
This Earth, My Brother, Going Down River Road, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, all of these writers, we're going to get contemporary voices to do the audio. This particular deal, we said, please, we want to distribute in Africa for ourselves on the continent. And they're like, is there a market? And we're like, well, we think there is one. We want to test it and grow it. So with this particular audiobook deal, we'll be able to distribute those books on the continent. And I'm excited about that because a lot of people grew up reading at least one African Writers Series title, Things Fall Apart, or one of the other classics. We have our own, a lot from Ghana, our own writers were involved. And I think it's going to be real fun to be able to have that catalog.
It does sound amazing.
On the continent.
It does sound amazing. And we look forward to those books being published as audio. I think at this point we will listen to The Kaya Girl by Mamli Wulu. The great thing is that it is a Ghanaian book. I think there's a little sad twist to the tale. It's a Ghanaian book, but the rights for the audio are not locally owned. Is it ready? Okay, let's take a listen.
Although I'd noticed the girls with large headbands walking around on my first day, I hadn't paid them much attention till one came into the shop. That was when a customer had made a large purchase. Abena, go outside and call us a kaya, yo, Auntie said. A kaya what? Your parents are making a brownie out of you at that American school. Auntie smiled, glancing with a mixture of pride and embarrassment at her customers. Being the niece from the most expensive high school in Ghana was no problem. In fact, I'd soon realized it was the main reason she'd wanted me in her shop. Having someone who sounded expensive, her description of me, serve the customers was exactly what she wanted. But sounding like a bruni, a white person, or what she really meant, a clueless foreigner, was taking the glamour too far, even for her. Gifty called me bruni too, though I was darker skinned than she was, to show that she didn't consider someone as privileged as me a real Ghanaian. You don't know Kayaye, those girls walking all over the market with pans on their heads? Oh, them! Kopedi Mami. She switched to Chi in that deliberate manner. She was on a mission to rescue the Ghanaian in me. Go find me one. I stepped outside, blinking in the blazing sunshine, and screwed up my eyes, trying to spot one of the girls Auntie was talking about. It didn't take long, because the girl signaled pertly when she saw me scanning the stores and alleys. I nodded, and she marched briskly to the shop. I'd noticed them more since then, but I'd never had the urge to talk to them until today. This one was different. She looked no older than me, and behind her intensity, there was a shy, slightly scared look in her eyes. And when I realized she didn't speak any language I knew, I was amazed and intrigued. A girl working as a market porter might not know English because she wasn't going to school. But how could she possibly manage in Makola Market without Tree or Ga? What did she speak? I wondered as I trailed her and her customer. Perhaps I'll find out when we reach the car park. But I did not. She just lowered her headpan, packed the rolls of cloth back into their bags, and placed them in the madam's car trunk for her. Then she accepted the proffered coins with a tiny nod and lifted the empty bowl back onto her head. The car sparked with a rich purr as she turned around. She saw me immediately, and I knew she was not surprised, although she'd had no idea I was following her. She smiled the same smile. It was the second time, and I noticed the same thing, that when she smiled at me, the lost look in her eyes disappeared. Perhaps that was what had made me follow her. The wind was stirring up dust, and vendors around the car park were starting to pack away their wares. Rain seemed certain, but you could never tell at this time of year whether it would actually fall or blow over. I didn't want to get caught in a downpour, and I knew Auntie would be wondering where I was. Judging from the girl's grip on her bowl, she knew she should be looking for her next customer. But she just walked over to me, as if we had an appointment. We looked at each other, and I noticed she had a fine line etched vertically in the middle of each cheek. Yafreni Abena, I said in Twi, putting a hand up to my chest. Yuli Faiza, she said in a language I would soon find out was called Dagbanle. We did not speak each other's languages, but I heard her name and she heard mine. And I found out other things about her too that day. Don't ask me how, but she was just so easy to talk to. There was a calmness about her that made it seem as if we had all the time in the world, even while the wind whipped around us. I spoke a bit more Twi, and she spoke a bit more Dagbanle. And I guess we must have used some sign language and a few universal words that she could understand as we stood there amid people dashing for shelter, barely noticing the few drops the clouds flecked us with as they moved lazily on. In our patchwork of communication, there was laughter and exclamations, and no one watching from a distance could have dreamed we had no language in common. It was like speaking made-up language with a baby. The words didn't matter because the meaning was in everything else. The intonation, the eye contact, the body language. I don't know how to explain it, but I found her easier to talk to than people with whom I could converse in 2 or 3 languages. She came from a place called Tolong in the northern region, and she had just arrived in Accra the day before. And she was 14 years old, like me.
Well, so that was an excerpt from The Kaya Girl by Mamle Wolo. The thing is, some of the titles that we have listened to are available as print copies as well. And so for The Kaya Girl, I can say for sure that there are copies available, probably at Vidya, but certainly they can be bought. And then we also know that Suma Went Walking is available as a print copy as well. There are other books we have listened to so far. Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, obviously will be available online. I mean, somewhere it's a really very popular book.
It's also available in Ghana on Book Nook store website.
Let me see if I can very quickly pull it up. And then if there are any questions, there's a microphone actually for the audience. I can't really see those in the audience because of the lights, but if you do have a question, you can raise up your hand. Gladstone, who is assistant, will be able to help you with the microphone. Professor Ladewo Sunu, well, so sometimes the devices just don't work, isn't it? Okay, so I'll just try and hear this. So what he's saying is the range of the themes covered by the audiobooks are really very fascinating. And he thinks that your personal story is very engaging, especially how you dealt with your mother's challenge. And he says Ayiko as well. Okay, so that is